In the United States, the latest poll shows Barack Obama has a solid 13-point lead over John McCain. Obama is making a stop today in Indiana before heading back to Hawaii to visit his sick grandmother. John McCain, meanwhile, kicked off a bus tour in the key battleground state of Florida. He attacked Obama on taxes and on spending and what he called Obama's lack of experience. Solon Simmons is a professor at George Mason University's Institute for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. He specializes in American politics. Joins us now from Washington. Mr. Simmons, is this thing all but over now? Does Obama have it all wrapped up?
You got to be careful. Still got a little bit of time. There's some there's some stuff could happen. We don't know. 13 points, I would say, is too high. I think the race is more like a 7-point race at this point. Obama looks really good and has looked really good. I think the last opportunity was the Joe the Plumber line that we saw move around. When you hit with Colin Powell, that's a pretty good matchup between those two guys, and I think Colin Powell's winning that day. But I mean, look, if McCain wins, we're all going to be surprised. But he surprised a lot of us before, so we ought to be cautious.
Was Colin Powell's endorsement a big deal, do you think, with voters?
Boy, it sure was. I really do think so. And we always say, everyone in the business says that you don't want to pay too much attention to these endorsements. But Colin Powell matters because he appealed to people who are still on the fence. Keep in mind what Obama's doing. If he knows he may win, but he also has to govern. And he's trying to create a bunch of Obama Republicans, just like Reagan had done with the Democrats before. And you have to do that by convincing people. You don't necessarily, you can't convince ideologues. You can convince people who'd like to try a variety of things and are moderate in in the means they'd like to use. And that's what Colin Powell represents. He's largely moderate. He's not particularly ideological. And so too are a lot of Americans. And Obama's going to try to win them over to what is ultimately a very liberal position in an American context.
Sarah Palin has demonstrated some difficulty defining the job of vice president. Powell said rather succinctly that the job of the vice president is to prepare to be the president. And if a lot of Americans sit up and pay attention to that, the McCain ticket is in big trouble.
You would think. You would think. I mean, many people are wondering in the Republican and conservative side now if that was a good decision, and I don't think they all believe that it was. Colin Powell, you know, the most powerful part about that speech to me was when he talked about religious inclusiveness. And you got a sense that Sarah Palin also is troubling there. Not that she's in any ways biased or in an overt way biased, but there's just something in her very being and what she represents as a choice that seems alienating to a lot of people, whether that's African Americans or Muslims or whoever it might be. It's let's call it not the normative American, but the normal American finds that to be frustrating. And I think the Palin pick is probably something McCain might take back. He'll never admit it, but he might take it back now.
What about the donations and the $150 grand for the family makeover? That's getting an awful lot of ink. Is it worth it?
Well, you know, when I thought about that, it seemed to me to remind me of the $400 haircut that John Edwards got. You know, we remember this economic populist who is getting $400 haircuts, and here we have a social populist. She's not really an economic populist in terms of policy, but she appeals to the common man, the working man, what have you. And I think that the working man feels a little uncomfortable with $150,000 spent on designer clothes. But mind you, if they were winning, people wouldn't be paying attention to this. They'd mention it, it'd come and go. You pile on when things don't look good. And after the Powell endorsement and where the race is, I think people are just going to pile on, and the coverage is pretty negative toward McCain right now.
It's often been said in the past that an awful lot of voters actually make up their mind just before they tick with the pencil. Do you think that's going to happen this time around, or do you think most Americans are really pretty convinced they know who they want?
It's hard to say. You know, we don't really even know this answer, to be honest, in the scientific community and political science. We see what people say on surveys, and they say, well, within the last 2 weeks, within the last day, there is a lot of closing that happens. But it's not exactly clear. I'm sure that there are many people who are waiting to make up their mind and saying, can I hold my nose and go in and vote for someone who's not exactly where I want to be? But that's the problem of having two parties. I mean, we have a two-party system. The person's never going to appeal to all the things you like about them. So I guess it's the nature of that kind of a structure.
You know, an awful lot was made in the early going of this campaign, which, of course, was, I think, about 5 years ago.
Right, it feels like it.
I tell you, your presidential elections go on forever. But a lot was made about the fact that Barack Obama was black. I haven't heard that said for so long now. Do you think, have we gotten past that? Or is there kind of something at a subconscious level at play?
Well, I think a lot of it's coming back. I mean, we talk about it in other terms like the Bradley effect, where the people say that they'll vote for, what they really supposedly say is that they won't vote. They don't know who they're going to vote for, and they really do. It's a version of what we call social desirability bias, lying to pollsters, basically. But you know, the race thing is huge. It's still there. The fact that they won't touch Jeremiah Wright, you know, months ago we talked about that. I mean, that's a big issue, and it might make sense, but they had to go Bill Ayers, which is really a stretch. And Acorn now, which has got racial overtones to it, which is a group that advocates for low-income people, often African-Americans. So race is there. It's going to matter, but we're all hoping he can transform on that issue.
Solon Simmons, always fun to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Great to see you, Dan.